Hi, and welcome to episode 37 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. My name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown on Ravelry, Instagram, Pinterest, and it's also the name of my Etsy shop. And today is Sunday the 19th of June 2016. It's lovely to have your company. We are currently running a local knit-along in the Give Me a Crown Ravelry group, so if you're knitting with any local yarns or patterns, then please pop by the group and join in the chatter, and the rules for the knit-along are in the finished objects thread, so check those out if you're interested. We've been getting a lot of chatter in there recently, and we've also got some more finished objects in there, which is fantastic to see, and that knit-along is running until the 9th of July, so there's 3 weeks to go, I believe. This week I have 2 finished objects. I think there's 3 works in progress, and also I'll do a little bit of country-like chatter at the end about what I've been up to in the past week. So to start with finished objects, I'm wearing one. It's my breathing space pullover. Now I can't get the whole thing into shot, but I will see. I'm going to try to take the photographs after I finish recording the podcast, so I'll try to insert a photograph here. This is a paid pattern by Veera Välimäki, who's a Finnish knitwear designer, but the pattern's available in English as part of the Interpretations 3 collection with Johi Locatelli. It's a pattern that's been knit by quite a few people, and I followed the pattern as it's written and didn't have any issues with the pattern itself. I'm a little bit not entirely convinced by the fit of it. You might be able to see in the photographs that one side sort of bulges a little bit, and I've seen that in other people's finished objects. So I'm not entirely sure whether it will just settle down with a bit of wear, or whether I might need to sort of chop off the bottom half and re-knit it, because quite a few people have done it without all the increases that are called for in the pattern. And I don't know whether it's the tightness of my bind off or just the shape of my body, but I'm happy with it. But it might just be that it's a different kind of shape to what I normally wear, so I'm going to give it a little bit of wear and see how I feel. But overall, it's amazing. I've knit it with Miss Click Clack Merry Creek Sock yarn, and I absolutely love the feel of this yarn. This is my first indie dyed yarn garment, and absolutely want to knit so many more garments out of Miss Click Clack yarn and other indie dyers, because it feels amazing. I love the colours. So there's a speckled yarn with a semi-solid or tonal, whichever the right word is for it, tonal yarn, I think it is. I mentioned a few weeks back that I had some issues with the short rows around the collar, and it was, again, no fault of the pattern. It was just I was doing them the wrong way and didn't realise until I was further into the pattern that I'd left some little holes. I used some of the tail ends to sort of patch up the holes, and they're pretty much invisible now, so I'm really happy with that. I ended up using 311 grams or 1,163 meters, which is 1,270 yards of yarn, and I had 3 balls of the grey, or 3 skeins of the grey, and I did actually break into the third of those just so that I could finish off one of the sleeves with the same yarn ball, because otherwise I would have been sort of swapping out around there, and I was worried that I would get a line, so I did all my colour changes in this sort of sleeve section so that you can't sort of see that I've changed yarn balls. I have actually been figuring out that I have a favourite speckle on here. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show it on camera, but there's one which has got browns with a little touch of red in there, and it is my absolute favourite speckle in this pullover or jumper, so I'm really happy with that. I think last week I had finished I was sort of still in the stripe section of one sleeve, and it only took me 2 nights to finish up the second sleeve. And I think part of that is that I could just see the finish line and I wanted to get it done, but also because I'd already figured out where my decreases were on the other sleeve and I'd put markers in there. With this one, it was just a matter of counting the stripes to make sure that I did the decreases in the same spot. So I find that with socks as well, that the first sock can sometimes be slower if there's a pattern or some calculations that need to happen. Because I make note of what I've done, the second one sort of flies off the needles, which is always fun. So I'm thrilled that I have this pullover, and just really happy. So can definitely highly recommend the Miss Click Clack yarns, because they're just fantastic for garments and socks. So my second finished object is my Maluka shawl. So this is what I've been knitting for the local knit along, because this is knit from Adagio Mill's alpaca yarn, which is processed and spun locally, and I'm guessing that the alpacas are local as well. So it is a shawl that is knit along the lace edge first, and then the body is filled in. And I did some modifications, so there were decreases along the body in the original pattern, and it's a free pattern, so I'm not giving anything away. And I decided to just use short rows. So in my Ravelry project notes, I've included information about, sort of rough information about how I've done those, but if you're interested in knitting this shawl, then let me know and I can provide better instructions. I realised that I didn't have anywhere to actually block this shawl, so I went to a hardware shop called Bunnings, which is a chain of hardware stores here in Australia, and I'd seen before that they had those foam mats that are kind of like puzzle pieces and you put them together. So I got a set of those. There was 4 blocks in the pack, and it made up a 1 by 1 meter square, or you can put them into a straight row. I think it was $12 for the 4 pack, so that wasn't too bad. And I laid out 3 of them together so that I could block this shawl, and it's turned out to be about 1.5 meters, or just around 5 foot. And I haven't quite figured out how to wear it yet, because it was still drying this morning, but I think sort of wrapped up like that somehow. I'm sure I could do it neater and with it's sort of fading into the pullover behind it, but I like the fact that it's 2-colour with the body in brown and the lace in grey, which are my favourite colours. So it turned out well. There were a lot of comments in the projects on Ravelry about some quirks, and I've spoken about those as I've been working on this in the last few weeks, so you can check back the past episodes to find out about those. Absolutely loved working with the Adagio Mills yarn. There is vegetable matter in there from time to time, but that's absolutely fine. It just sort of shows how little processing it has in comparison to mass manufactured yarns. I'm happy with that. It is lightweight. I haven't actually weighed it yet, I don't think. I'm guessing it's probably about 80 grams, because I've got some left over of the grey and some left over of the brown. It might be about 90 grams actually, but it's lightweight and it will keep my neck nice and warm because it's alpaca. So that's that one. I then have a few works in progress. So I have my hand spun socks, and I'd like to thank everyone who has been giving me tips on sock heel patterns for toe-up socks. This is where I'm up to with the sock. And I was given some recommendations for the OMG heel, and I have Partridge heel, Sockmatician's Toe-Ups, which is a new pattern, and the Widdershins Revisited heel. I had a look at each of those, but I had a few recommendations for the Sockmatician Toe-Ups, and I've sort of seen it mentioned on some podcasts recently, so I thought that I would give that one a go. It was, from memory, £2 British, which was around $4 Australian for the pattern. And because I'd already started the sock, the only part of it that I referred to was the heel. So that's what the heel looks like. So it looks very much like a standard heel that you do cuff down, or the ones that I do anyway. And I'm trying to figure out what to say about it, because I haven't actually done the whole pattern, and so I don't want to necessarily critique the pattern until I've read through it all, but I read enough in order to be able to do the heel. From what I've seen of it so far, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to a beginner sock knitter, because I think that there's a little, it's similar to the Fish Lips Kiss heel pattern, that there's a bit of story around what's going on, and I think sometimes the pattern instructions can get a little bit lost in the story, because I sort of jumped off to the heel section, and then suddenly I'm realizing I've got no idea what I'm actually meant to be calculating. So I went backwards, sort of tried to hunt around the pattern for the information, and then I think I ended up finding it. I found it there, but then I think I actually also found it on the last page in the key, that there were some things that hadn't been explained before. And so I was very much an impatient pattern user, where I sort of skipped the stuff at the front and just sort of dove in, whereas I probably should have read. From an information design point of view, I think that there's elements of it that could be laid out in a way that would help somebody use it in a more effective or efficient way, but it's still a pattern, it works. So yeah, hopefully I haven't put anyone off it, because I think that overall it seems to have worked for me. I was really petrified as I was turning the heel that my sock was way too short, and I thought maybe I've just got a funny foot, but once I'd sort of continued up, I realized that it was fitting okay. I think that I possibly miscalculated a touch, but these socks will fit fine. I will at some point re-knit, like use the whole pattern or recipe to knit a pair of socks, and I'll see how that goes, and I will actually read the whole thing rather than skipping forward. As for how how easy it is to put it into memory, I'm not entirely sure. I think the Fish Lips Kiss heel, after I've done it a few times, is fairly easy to redo. This one, I'm not entirely sure, and I think that's just from the information design point of view, that I think there are aspects of it that could be written better and it would then make more sense, and that's possibly just to me. Everyone's brains work differently, so other people might just sort of go through it once and go, yep, I know exactly what I'm doing, regardless of how many stitches my sock has. So yeah, so my sock is going along. This is the fondant fibre deep and meaningful handspun that I have been showing recently, and I spun recently. It's got purple sections, and then it's got the more mottled sections when I've been plying the yarn, because I just plied two plies together. But I'm really happy to see this sort of stripe effect going on, because that's sort of what I was aiming for. And that's the other side. I'm not too sure at the moment how tall I'm going to make these. It is a fairly dense fabric, and I think the yarn itself is possibly closer to sport weight than fingering weight, but I'm using 2.25mm needles. So I'm not sure I'd really want such dense socks to be too tall, so I may start the ribbing fairly soon, maybe do 1.5 inches or so of ribbing. I think that's that for these socks for the time being. So I do love the heel, and there were definitely aspects of the pattern that were sort of light bulb moments that obviously I can't share because it's a paid pattern, and it's the sort of thing that once you try it a few times, it possibly will stick in memory, and it will be a heel that I go back to time and time again. My next work in progress is a new one, and it's in my Shop Luli project bag. So it's a little project for a little person to be, and I've been having a look at different patterns for babies and newborns, for a cousin's baby. Oops, sorry about the needle clinking. For a cousin's baby that is due to be born in October. So I'm figuring that because the baby is going to be born in October in a very cold climate, everyone's going to be giving sort of 6 months old or 12-month old warm woolly things. So I thought I would go for a newborn pattern, and this is the Newborn Vertebrae, which is a free pattern by Kelly Brooker, something like that. And she has also written I think it's the baby vertebrae, kitty vertebrae, and mama vertebrae, so they're all paid patterns, but the newborn size is free. So I'm knitting, I've gotten that far. Sorry about the needles. I've gotten that far, which isn't very far, but this is sort of being knit from the back of the neck down, and there's some raglan increases for the sleeves. Sorry, I keep hitting the needles. And yeah, so there's not too much happening there yet. I only cast it on last night, but I'm using the Morrison Sons Estate 4-ply, which is 100% Australian wool, and I'm thinking about using this fur colour. So this one was Tuscan, yep, that one's Tuscan, this one's fur. So they're not typically girly colours, but I see them as a bit of a retro kind of colour. So this is the primary colour, but I don't have enough of it, so I'm thinking of maybe doing the ribbing and the band that goes around in this. So it's I forgot to mention that it's like an open cardigan for a baby or newborn. So it doesn't have any buttons or anything like that, but it has essentially a button band, but without buttons going around it. So I might use that one, or I might go with a white. The white might make it look a little bit more girly without being girly, considering that I'm using sort of a pumpkiny orangey colour. I'm using these because they were in my stash, and because I know that these aren't necessarily the softest in the ball, but once they've been washed they come up really, really nicely. I've knit a pullover out of this yarn and I absolutely love it, so I think that these will work well, and they are also, they can be gentle machine washed and ironed with a damp cloth, so for being able to wash baby liquids off, I think they'll work well. So I haven't gotten very far. I'm not entirely sure how my sizing is going yet because I haven't done a gauge swatch. I've sort of been measuring a little bit, but because I didn't have the needle sizes required, I went down a little bit of a needle size, and I'm trying to knit loosely, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, I'm sure it will be fine. but I'll find out once I've gotten a little bit further. I have also been doing a little bit of spinning, not too much. I've been spinning on my drop spindle, and this is one of the fondant fibre fuzzlings that I got in a few weeks back. So it's got some greens and some blues and some light blues and some sparkly bits. So sparkly greens and bronzes and various things. So it's coming up interesting. I'm not entirely sure what I'm spinning that up for, but I just want to spin. So I realised that my charcoal pottery yarn bowl fits a fuzzling quite happily. So that's what it looks like. And yeah, I'm trying to sort of get some sections of the blue, some of the green, and some of the grey. They are different fibres. I'm finding that the length of the fibres vary, and the way that they sort of intermingle with each other can vary. So I've had a few drops of the drop spindle while I've been working on that, but I'm trying to remember to spin over carpet so that I don't end up damaging my drop spindle. So I think I need to cast on some new projects soon. I need to have a look at Ravelry to see what new patterns have been coming out and what other people are working on to get some ideas, and I need to go through my stash a bit to see what I've got, but I'm sure that there's some socks coming up and probably a pullover or something, because the newborn vertebrae isn't going to take too long, and it would be good to have something else on the go as well as the other projects that I'm working on. So it's now on to chatter. If you're not interested, then there's a little bit of knitting and spinning related chatter in here, but if you're not interested, then thanks for watching. For those who are interested, I just thought I'd first of all mention that with my gobbledygook pretty much being sorted out, I think, maybe, we'll see, and with the end of financial year coming up here in Australia, so it's the first year that I've had the Give Me a Crown business running, so I'm getting my books in order, ready for tax time, and a lot of companies here do an end of financial year sale, so as part of that I thought that I should offer 20% off in the Give Me a Crown Etsy shop to the podcast viewers. So you can use the coupon code GMAC podcast 20, all as one word, in the Etsy shop to get 20% off any items. It doesn't include a discount on shipping, but the shipping for most of my items is fairly low because they can be flat shipped, and then if you order something larger like a medium project bag, then anything else on top of that is free shipping. But Etsy doesn't necessarily always calculate it correctly, so you can always contact me for a fixed quote and I'll be happy to give that to you, or if you just buy what's there, then I will always refund the extra postage that you've paid. I did go over to Cowra on Thursday to pick up the blocking mats, and when I was there I thought that I'd drop into the information centre just to see what sort of local things they had for sale. And as I was chatting to one of the people working there about the local markets and whether they run on rainy weekends and what have you, we got chatting about the fact that she'd bought some fibre at a recent market. She noticed that I was wearing a knitted jumper, and I said that I was into spinning, and then she said that she had to introduce me to some people, so she took me around the side of the information centre, and there's an arts and crafts room, and Thursday happened to be the local spinning group day, so I spent probably a good hour in there chatting away to the wonderful ladies about spinning and about the fact that I've recently moved into the area, and they, as a group, they meet up every Thursday and so I'll see what happens. It's a bit of a drive and a bit of a dent in my day to go out to Cowra each Thursday, so ideally I'd prefer to find a spinning group or sort of crafty group a little bit more locally in one of the local villages, but it's definitely good to know that there's an option. They also sell some of their handmade items there, so they had scarves and beanies and pullovers and all sorts of things. They also sold hand spun yarn that they'd made up, and I got to see my first ever e-spinner in real life. Well, there was two of them actually, and chatting to them about using their e-spinners and the fact that they had power cables, and one of them was ordering one which had a battery in it, which would mean that she didn't always have to be plugged into power. So that's something that I hadn't really thought about with e-spinners. And there was also a small drum carder, which was fun to see. It wasn't sort of in the process of being used, but I got to sort of stare at it and wish that I had one. So it was lovely to meet them, and something that I'll see if I can get involved with at some point in time. I have also been staring at the wonderful birds in the garden a lot recently. The rosellas have definitely, or the crimson rosellas have definitely started to know that I'm the one who feeds them. So I was hanging out the washing and I heard a huge racket in the tree nearby, and I realised that it was the crimson rosellas calling out for their food. So I went and got a cupful of bird seed, put it out for them, and as I was putting it out, they landed on the tree trunks to start eating, and I don't think they sort of realised that I was still standing there, so I managed to get some close-up footage of them. And I also spotted an eastern rosella. I saw that it was a completely different colour. When I was looking at my poor little plants, I saw in the distance that there was this different coloured bird. I went in, I got my camera, but I didn't get a chance to get my tripod, but I took some footage of it and then later checked the bird book to see that it was an eastern rosella, and there was two of them sort of hopping around for a short while. So that was fun to see, and I'm definitely starting to do this whole identifying birds thing, which is slightly funny, but it's fun. So I will put some footage in of the birds, and I think I've managed to not mention the weather, which is pretty impressive after the recent weeks where I've been complaining and complaining. But it is raining at the moment, and we had some good days, we had some bad days, and at the moment the weather forecast for Friday is showing rain and snow. So I don't know what the Australian definition of snow is when it comes to forecasts, but I could only imagine that when the temperature is still above zero, it's just going to be wet stuff falling from the sky in bigger chunks. So in Finnish they would call it räntä. So yeah, it would be lovely to see some snow, but I can't imagine that it's actually going to be snow. But I am hopeful that there is some snow this winter. There's something just magical about snow. It's much more pleasant than raindrops falling from the sky constantly. But as I've said before, I don't mind a bit of rain, but just not all the time. Anyway, I managed to get in a little bit of weather, and I'll leave it there. I am going to get this video edited. I will try to get some photos of my Maluka shawl, one of the other shawls, my handspun shawl that I knit ages ago and I forgot to photograph, and this breathing space, yay! And also my Geisler cardigan, even though it still doesn't have buttons, but yeah, so I'll have a bit of a photo shoot if I can manage that while this video processes, and I'll get it up. And I think it's going to be soup day again today with the weather as it is. So I hope you're well. I hope that you're getting lots and lots of crafty time. I hope it's not too wet and miserable where you are. I've heard that it's raining in very many places across the world. So I'll see you soon.